Welcome, everybody, to Chelsea Music Hall. We are live on location. This is a recording of Bellwether Culture Podcast. I am so happy you are here with me. I am Puffin Ball, your host, and today we have with us Sarah Mary Cunningham of Columbia Records. We'll do one more applause, right? We're in front of a live audience over here. It is live. It is live as hell. Sarah Mary. You go straight Sarah Mary, right?
Yeah, Sarah Mary works. People also call me Sarah SMC. I'm name fluid, like Diddy.
Nice.
We have that
Perfect.
in common.
Excellent. Amazing. Name fluid. That's a thing.
Yeah.
That's really good. Why don't we just start with this super basic, toss-up question? Of course, we understand what you do, but in your terms, like, who are you? What are you all about?
Sure. So I'm a New Yorker. I've been a New Yorker since 2004. I'm really passionate about fitness and especially like the outdoors community, so I do consider myself a mountaineer. And I'm also a publicist, and I do mostly work with talent. And people always say, well, why do you work with talent or not brands? And I have done some brand work in the past, but the reason I love working with humans is because I believe we are the most authentic when we closely resembled what we dreamed ourselves to be. And I've pitched brands before, and I've done publicity and written for, written profiles for brands and worked with brands, and it's great. But when you help someone to tell their story, or you help to refine the story, or you help to elevate someone, or they come to you with a project and a vision for that project and a vision for what they want to be and what they sound like and like how they want this project to get out to people, and you get to be part of that and help them be the star that they are, or like help support their journey to like their artistic greatness, to me that is a true gift. And occasionally with work, you'll be like, oh my God, I can't believe I work in this industry, or sometimes like things will be frustrating, but every time I'm like, that's it, like I'm gonna go learn anatomy so I can become like, work in a gym or something, or whenever I think something like that, then I'm like, who am I kidding? I have the best job in the world.
Now, if somebody was gonna name drop for you, who would they drop in terms of who your clients are, to give a little perspective?
So I'm in-house at Columbia Records. We are home to everyone from Adele, AC/DC, Chainsmokers, Leon Bridges, Hozier, Wet. We have a wide, wonderful range of artists. When I first started my career, my very first talent client was like Damien Fahey of MTV's TRL. I worked on Joan Jett. I worked on Jordan Knight's solo album. I was like, don't scream in his face, because that was like one of the first cassettes I bought with babysitting money. And then I later went to work for Chamber Group, and I think my keynote clients at Chamber Group, I had 2 Chainz. I worked with Solange, who's also part of Columbia Records family. I had J. Cole. I worked on Drake. I wrote Drake's first press release, which is always like crazy to me. I worked on Lil Wayne. I had a wide range of clients. So over the years, I've certainly worked with a lot of people in the music space and a lot of people who've done really interesting and beautiful work. Probably right now, Wet's on tour, so that takes up a lot of my time. Leon Bridges just won a Grammy, his first ever, 4-time nominee, but first-time winner, so that was really special. Yep. That takes up a lot of time. I'm really blessed to work with Rosalia. I think she might be the most interesting artist in the world, and like what she's doing for flamenco and introducing people to flamenco is fascinating.
Yo, you are amazing at what you do. All right.
So that's kind of, I guess that would be kind of everything. But right now, if it's in-house at Columbia Records, that's what I work on. I'm not a free agent, so.
Amazing. All right, so let's start with the journey, right?
Okay.
You grew up in, I would say, to me, it's unorthodox. Your dad is a theologist, kind of an award-winning scientist, if you will, or technologist. And your mom is a historian and clay maker? Or?
Yeah, so my father is a world-renowned theologian. I'm so proud of him. When I was little, I didn't really understand what he did.
It's not theologist?
Yeah, then people would ask me what he did, and I'm like, he's a theologian. I don't know, but my father's a theologian, and my mom is an art historian and a clay artist.
Okay. What was growing up in that environment like in terms of like how was your education, you think, a little bit different than, say, mine coming from an engineering background and staying at home mom?
Sure. So we lived in South Bend, Indiana. It was a small town, but the reson we lived there is because the University of
Did you get a woo? Was there a woo for South Bend, Indiana?
There's a girl from Nebraska here who knows Corntown girls. So we lived in a small farm town, kind of like, well, it's more rural. There's a lot of corn. It's Indiana. But the reason we lived there is because my parents were based, mostly my father, at the University of Notre Dame. So what was cool about our childhood is that like the spoken word was really important, the written word was important, the visual arts were important. When the university was up, for the school year, my parents had 3 months off, so we would just pack up and travel. We traveled all over the world. Like one summer, my mom took us to live in Italy, and we just like lived in Italy, and because they had those summers off. And I think also though, I was a typical kid. I did 4-H. I rode my bike down, dirt roads. Like we did all that great kayaking and camping, which at the time I hated and thought I was so above. And it's funny how I later came back to that in life and loved it. But I would say that the coolest thing about having parents like mine is there was never this stress of like, you have to get this job, or, you have to study business in college. My parents had for years had students would cry and say, oh, I really wanted to study art history, but my parents said I had to study management. And my parents were more like, you'll find your way. You just have to be open to other cultures. You have to be, let's write a little bit every day. Let's make sure we practice speaking to each other and like advocating for ourselves, and everything will fall into place. So they were more kind of concerned about making sure we had experiences and that we learned how to learn and wanted to learn. And I think that's kind of the way our household worked.
So obviously skipping quite a few years, but you studied art, film, and theater at Notre Dame?
I was at Notre Dame and I studied film, television, and theater.
Television, theater.
And I was really also interested in semiotics, so the way we use language, the way we read patterns as a language. But there wasn't really minors there, so it was, film, television, and theater.
So you came to New York, you mentioned earlier 2004 or so, which I also appreciate that you said that you're a New Yorker.
I worked really hard to last 10 years so I could be like, I am a New Yorker.
It's funny, like some people, I would say like early 2000s, some people would say like 5 years is the cutoff, and now it's 10 years. So I agree.
Yeah, 10 years.
Full on.
I know. How many times have you wanted to divorce this city, and then you're like, fine, we'll try again. So a lot. A lot.
So let me give you a distinction. I'm a native New Yorker, never not once.
Right? Okay, cool. See? Yeah.
Love this motherfucking city.
I do too. Although, like every once in a while, when there's like a subway breakdown in the heat, or like I was like once like flash jogging in like broad daylight, and I was like, "Are you kidding?" Like, or I was like walking home from like Whole Foods, it started raining, and then like in like a TV show, my bags broke, and I was like, "This city is done." And then I'm like, "Who am I kidding?"
So fast forward to the reason why you brought it over here, and like your kind of foray going into PR.
Sure.
So like it's not an easy industry to be successful at, especially on the level of how successful you have become.
Thank you. When I was growing up, I loved reading magazines. The cool part about living in South Bend is that all of my nannies growing up were European graduate and law students who needed to work for cash. They didn't have the proper visas, and they would play cool music for me, and they would bring me magazines. And I remember my Belgian nanny gave me like a bottle of Issey Miyake perfume, and I was so fascinated by it. And then she was like,
that was the one that looked like the woman, right?
No, it was the one that was like very conical and sculptural. And then I was like, what is this? And she's like, oh my God, don't you know about pleating? And the next thing I know, we're like flipping through like magazines, and like my babysitter at the time, I remember younger, was a really cool graduate or PhD student who bought me like Liz Phair's tapes, and she would take me to like the music store, and I remember being like, I need to be exposed to these places. And I think I had lived in the Midwest and I wanted to try something else, and I was like, I wish there was a job that you could get paid to talk and just know about like art and film and music, and you could like pay attention to like cultural patterns, and you could just like go out and talk and like just be in a big city. And I was like, jobs like that don't exist. And turns out it's publicity. So, I was younger, I was like, I'm gonna be a magazine editor. And then I was like, I'm gonna be a film development person. And I had all these different things, but I know I wanted to do something with writing and speaking. And again, storytelling is very important. My parents always taught me that every culture historically and every person on this planet, the one thing that we all have in common is that we record our histories, we share our histories, we share our stories, that storytelling is important. So while studying FTT, I went to intern for a semester in New York City, and I loved it. And I called my mom, and I was like, I don't think I need to finish my senior year. Like, I'm good here. And she panicked and flew to New York, packed me up, and we went home. And after that, I was like, I kind of want to go back to New York. And I was actually interning at the University of Notre Dame's Public Relations Department when 9/11 happened. And I remember like back then there was still like the AP fax machine, and all these papers were like faxing out, and they turned on all the TVs, and it was just being reported all over the world, and like the ticker tape was running, and thinking how interesting like the way media reacts is, and how media and like how we archive media. And coming back to the city, I was I was kind of working on film sets, and I wasn't loving it as much as I thought.
So you did make your way back, though.
I moved back I graduated, and I went to Florida with my sister for a week, and I came back, and I packed up all my stuff, and I, moved to New York City. And like a good recent college graduate, I got an apartment in Murray Hill, and, I would, run around in my little, yellow high heels from Steve Madden that I thought were so chic, and I was like, I'm so edgy in my high heels, and, I ran around. But all over the city. And it was funny because I kind of started missing publicity, and I was interning at a very small film company that doesn't exist anymore. And they needed to keep track of this project that they had, so I would be clipping it up, and occasionally journalists would call and I would talk to them, and I'd be like, I kind of miss this. And then I was just like, this is what I need to do. I need to get into publicity. So, and that's kind of I guess that was really the genesis of it all.
That's it? I need to get into publicity?
I just felt like I was I need to be, that was it. I was like,
knocking on doors, I
was I love talking and shaping stories, and I love knowing who's who, and I love reading, and I love being on film sets, but I don't want to be the photographer. I love being on film sets, but I don't want to be video. I love seeing the way talent would behave maybe in the office or on set, and then how they would present themselves in the media. I found that to be, fascinating, and I just really missed publicity. And then I was like, this is really what I want to do. And I would be lying if it was easy. I could not get a single callback from a record label, which I think is so funny because now I have this job at Sony, but I couldn't get an internship at a label. I couldn't get an internship at any of the PR firms. I had this
an internship, unpaid at the time.
Unpaid
obviously.
internship. Yeah. I couldn't get freelance work. I was working for a club promoter. Shout out to Scott Hawkins. I would just show up to his parties every once in a while. And he'd be like, "Oh, I'm understaffed tonight. I could use an extra list girl," and I'll be like, "I'll do it." And I was like, because I thought that would maybe transfer over to publicity, and it did. And
really,
yeah, because again, having to remember who's who and hold a list and make it seem like it was really popping inside, and kind of just how we ran events. That is, we do a lot of events in publicity. But, I think I would run around town, and I had a day job at Anthropology, and I had bought this Nanette Lepore suit that was black with purple thread in it on super clearance, and I'd wear it. And I would I had my resume printed on paper, and then I wrote a press release for every agency about Sarah Mary Cunningham joins boutique agency du jour. And it was this whole, I would write a press release about myself, and then I'd go hand deliver them, and most people would just take them and be like, okay. And I didn't realize I was probably talking to unpaid interns themselves. And I'd hand it over, and they'd drop it in the basket. I only got yelled at by one firm. I showed up, and I was like, "Hi, I'd like to be a publicist, and I wanted to hand deliver my resume to you. I'm trying to get an internship or an assistant job." And this woman's like, "Did you honestly come in here in the middle of the day during pitch hours uninvited?" And she was like, "You need to go." And I was like, "Okay, bye." And then I was like, oh crap, she has my resume.
Also, there's pitch hours, so now
log
that
hours.
in.
I was like, oh my gosh. But it was funny because eventually, I got in there, and it's so funny because I remember there was a job open for, I think it was Lamb. Remember that brand, Gwen Stefani's Lamb? There was a job open for a publicity assistant, and every girl, 5 girls in my building applied for this job, and I remember being like, I'm gonna get it, and everybody wanted to get this job. And this other girl, who now does not work in publicity at all and doesn't even live in New York, she got it, and I was like, I'm so happy for you. And then I was in my apartment crying, and somebody said to me, look, if you really want these jobs, you have to wait it out. You have to stick it out, you have to fight for it, and then when you get in there, you need to come early, you need to stay late, you need to absorb everything like a sponge, and if you really want to do it, you will get your chance. And I did. It just, it took a minute. And I look back at myself, and I'd kind of like to kick my old self, because I didn't realize that all those things that I was doing, researching firms and going to learning labs and going to hear journalists speak at the New York Public Library because it was free, and you could hear them talk about their work, and going into Barnes & Noble and buying a coffee and then sitting there for hours reading the books written by PR firms and event companies and all that, that was good training ground. And all that freelance work I did,
That's
kind of
a lot
in the
of
city.
research.
Yeah, it's a lot of research, and it was a lot of tenacity and, having to try to cold call people on the phone and figure out who was who. And, every time somebody came into the club who was a PR firm and they would be having some event, I'd come up and I'd be like, I'd love to help if you ever need extra help. And I remember once this one woman who at the time was the big celeb publicist, I got a call from her assistant who's like, we need help. And I came in and I helped stuff 500 gift bags. And then they literally gave me a $10 Starbucks card. And they're like, thanks, see you later. And like, I remember in there like stuffing these bags. And I was like, I'm about to get a job. And no, but you know what? Like I was there. And I was kind of seeing how they worked. And at least like, I could say then at the next interview I'd get, and I recently was giving event support to A, B, and C, or, I've actually been called into so-and-so's office to help. Like, that's also pitching yourself, above, so.
What was your big break?
Actually, shout out to Rubenstein Associates, which is a corporate communications firm and a suit and tie place. They called me in for an interview, and I came in, and they said, look, we don't have music clients here. I think they, had a little bit. They're not really talent, but we are a really good firm. We are an award-winning firm, and if you come in here and you get a job, we will train you, and you will be helping with press conferences, and you'll be setting up secure lines, and you'll be making press kits and doing all this stuff, and you'll be listening to really quality publicists. And the man, I came in and got hired, and they trained you as an assistant, and then there was an opening for a man named Pat Smith, and Pat Smith was a longtime newspaper editor who is now a crisis counsel, an incredible civics publicist. He worked with Con Edison, New York Waterways. We did all of the civic press for like the David Blaine stunts. That man knew how to write. He knew how to calm down a furious newspaper editor. He was so specific in his words. And I went into Rubenstein every day in a suit in Midtown, and I always would go to like the team that did kind of the more event stuff, and I'd be like, I'm available to help you at your events in the evening. And one of the things with Rubenstein is you were supposed to help each other support events. We also did, Tribeca Film Festival. We had some really great stuff. So, and occasionally like, you'd be pitching these large scale things. So it was really a great training ground, and it really taught me a lot to like be careful with your wording and how to behave in a courtroom and how to support a team. And honestly, certain things in publicity carry over. Like, they really do carry over. And during that time, I would still go out at night. I went out all the time. I remember I knew a DJ, and he was, like, kind of looking to get involved in, like, he thought there was a new crop of publicists who didn't know him. And I was like, well, hire me, and I'll go write materials for you. So Stretch Armstrong hired me, like, as his publicist for his band. And, like, so, yeah, awesome guy. So. And I would pitch it, I'd send notes to updated publicists. I volunteered for clubs. I would meet, indie rock bands who would say, I'm trying to get a listing in the Village Voice. And I'll be like, I can write it and send it for you. And, once, I came into Rubenstein once, and I hadn't gotten all the eyeliner off. And then I put on a blazer that I thought was my black work blazer. And it was like a blazer with a leather collar that had like a skull with flames around it. And it was 2005, so you are not judging me for that embroidered blazer. But I put that blazer on and rolled into work, and Pat pulled me aside, and he goes, either you can go to HR or you can, like, take that blazer off. And he's like, I think you have something here. So, I was kind of still doing both, but it was awesome because years later, when I was at Chamber Group and I had a lot of rap artists, being able to stay calm in a crisis and knowing how to speak to trial attorneys, that came in handy. So, and like knowing how civics press worked, because if you have a court case in New York City, you may very well have a lot of crime press, in a courtroom or whatever. So I guess it all kind of, worked out in the end. But that was a really special, I was there for a little over a year, and that was like a really kind of special year of my life. And I'm really grateful that I had that opportunity.
All right, I think this is a perfect moment. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, it's going to be more with Sarah Mary Cunningham over at Columbia Records. Welcome back. We are at the Chelsea Music Hall in front of a beautiful live audience over here. And Sarah, of course, before we went into break, you were talking about a little bit about your journey, and it seems to me that there's just been a common kind of the red line is that you've just been really, really persistent. And, there's a common phrase, of course, talking about, luck finds those that are working, right? And, how do you attribute, I guess, this journey of yours? Where did you find it in the research? Do you attribute it to the constant effort?
I think it's just the want. If you really, I think sometimes you really have to want to do something to, like, stick in and stick with it. And I also think, too, it was just a matter of I enjoyed the work. I felt comfortable doing it. Kind of like how, when an artist comes to us and they were like, 6 months ago I was washing dishes, but I always had a dream of doing this type of album, and this is like what I imagined myself to look like and perform like. Same thing for myself. Like, I just felt like I was meant to be working, in media, and writing made me happy. Getting people on the phone, speaking, meeting photographers, trying to pay attention to different common pop culture threads, that kind of made me happy. So I was like, I figure it's worth it, and I'd rather have tried 100%, and if it was no longer serving me and making me unhappy, okay, then it's time to maybe dial back and do something, but at least you really tried, and you learned maybe something along the way. I just didn't want to be like, this is annoying, and go home. So
what do you think is the core aspect of your work? On the side, prior to going on, of course, we were just having a powwow, me, you, and your friend Tyler Burrow, and we were chatting about how your clients are almost like your projects, right? Each are their own portfolio. They all have a strategy that you are conceiving and you're bringing to life, and you alluded to that when you introduced yourself and what you do. What the fuck's the question? Did I answer it? I guess I'm wondering, so how do you view the scope of the work that you're doing?
So I still think publicity is really important. Occasionally I've had, especially younger digital strategists will say to me publicity doesn't matter, or publicists are relics, and that's not true. Our toolbox is different.
Relics is a harsh ass word.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Relics.
I literally had a kid say that to me at some at Forbes 30 Under 30. I was talking to somebody at a cocktail reception, and this kid's like, "Well, I'm a digital strategist," and he goes, "Just aren't you what else do you do?" Because he's like, aren't publicists sort of relics? And I was like, "What? No, go sit down, but go play with your phone." But for real, I think there's an art to what we do. I think a lot of people think publicity is just getting someone on the phone, or maybe someone. It's like, hey girl, can you do this story for me? And maybe in 2004, if you were pitching consumer products and talking to gossip mags, maybe. But the thing is, more than ever, we need to support quality journalism. We need to be sure to protect our stories and ourselves, and to celebrate what we do. And to me, I think publicists are important. We write speeches, we help, liaise and find stylists for people. We work with you to find your voice. I have artists who are incredible songwriters, and then you put a microphone in front of them, and maybe it's not natural to talk about yourself, or maybe you were shy, or maybe you were some type of otherness. If you're an artist of color, if you were someone who is LGBTQ+, maybe not everybody asked you your opinion and then valued it, or maybe talking to people was not always a safe space. So more than ever, it's how can we help you find your voice, or how can we help, make you feel confident? And I think that there's totally, a space for that. And also I think that, we maybe don't have as many magazines on the newsstand, but, look at how many interesting things are happening in late night television, and look at how many incredible long form digital stuff we have. I go to longform.org every day to see if something new's been added, and that's probably
Wait, what?
Longform.org, so it's where excellent long form articles are archived and added. I go to longform.org every single day. I think there's a lot of publications doing fascinating long form and digital, for sure. It might not be pages that you can turn, but you're still going to go to that website and read, really interesting articles. Podcasts have exploded. I just got onto the podcast train not too long
Rob,
ago.
we're going to put this video up on longform.org, longformcontent.org.
But I think that's all super important, and there's a finessing to what we do. So if you think it's just calling a journalist, being like, hey, let's do this story. No, there's so much more to it. And I also think that, and listen, I'm definitely a talker. I think that's very obvious, but Tyler's laughing so hard. But the thing is that sometimes being a publicist too, you really have to listen and what is the heart of what we're doing? Who's the audience that we want to reach? What's and especially if someone has a long catalog, what's gone right, what's gone wrong. Everything is different,
Not just that, it almost seems like you have to do preparation as if you were acting the role of your client. So, whether it's the gigs that you're booking, it's the copy that you're writing for them, it's the prep that you're giving, whether they're going to a red carpet or they're just going to even a party.
Right. Right.
So,
or even like artists getting in, so many artists, they use their platforms in a wonderful way. They become advocates for their hometown. They might embrace, social justice issues. They might have interesting organizations. They're doing exciting things in the brand space. So sometimes, I think it's really important also to listen. I remember I had an artist that was very outspoken for a long time about making sure that weed was legal, but then also releasing people who had been in prison for minor infractions for, marijuana-related offenses. And let's be honest, that's usually men of color, young men of color in urban areas. And this is something he really wanted to speak about. And he could speak about his experiences being, hassled and all of his experiences that he felt. So we kind of worked together to find out, who's a journalist that we can work closely with? Or is there a conference that you can go speak to? Or do you need to go speak to a politician, in your state? And let me pull some facts and figures for you. And let me pull some of the current laws and that sort of work. And then you can share your story and you can have this extra thing. But also, while making sure everything was refined, I didn't want to, erase that experience. And that artist is going to have experiences that I'll never understand or that I will never have. So I think also in that case, it becomes, listening and having your artist back, let's be honest, digital culture, it's very fast and it's a very difficult space to get into, and lots of things can happen. So I think it's, again, I think at the end of the day, we're working with, people, which is really special, and we're supporting the arts. And can you imagine a world without music? That would be so depressing. Can you imagine if all of a sudden, they shut down music? Every culture in the world has some type of, ethnographic type of music, and music is sometimes how certain stories were shared and how certain social justice things were being spoken about. It's fun. Can you imagine doing your workout class without a banging playlist? What was the song you were listening to at prom? What was the song that you first listened to when you got your driver's license and you turned your car on for the first time and you drove and mom wasn't sitting next to you, dad wasn't sitting next to you? What song
was yours?
What was mine? Oh my God, it was 1998, and I turned my car on, and it was that song that goes, paranoia, paranoia, everybody's coming. That song was was on the radio, which was hilarious because I already had to drive down the big highway to get to my high school, so kind of funny. But I remember that. I remember turning my car on, and that was on, turned it on, and I was yeah. But think of all the things.
Turned it on.
Yeah, but think of all the things in your life that you do to music, or music has mattered to you. The album you listen to during a breakup, the album you listen to before you go out at night. Music is such an important part of what we do, and it works with fashion, it works with film, and I just think a great part of publicity is just getting to support that and to share that.
Can you maybe share some insights with? Assume that there's an artist that's listening to this that's seeing a bit of a come-up moment and it's early, right? Can you share with some of the strategies that you're building in place for somebody in that profile that wants to accelerate but maybe doesn't have the means to, obviously, or they're not signed with a big label, or the means to hire someone on the press side?
Yeah, sure. So I don't necessarily believe in, you don't need to throw money at a publicist right away. This is whether you are designing a line of sweatshirts, or if you're trying to, screen a film, or if you're a musician. You don't have to hire a publicist out of the gate. First, make sure your product is exactly where you want it to be, because once you start sending it to the media and pitching, you kind of want all of that dialed in. If you're selling something, make sure once you start with publicity, sometimes publicity can kick into sales. So, don't start doing all this press on your line of hoodies and your production isn't, together and right, because somebody might read on it, especially these days, and go to learn more.
Well, expect the best case scenario,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. And, also I tell people, publicity may come fast or it may come later on. For artists these days, I'm don't forget to be involved in your own music scene. Get out and try and do tours. Get out and do club walkthroughs, do club appearances. If somebody writes back to you, favorite their tweet. Write back to them, too. I'm sorry, if you have less than 100,000 followers and you're I don't have time to answer, or whatever, come on. If somebody has time to say, I like your music, or I'm listening, or great content, you can favorite it. Beep, takes a second. And, and don't be afraid. If someone reaches out to you, the simplest way to vet it is, hey, I want to interview you for this website. Go look at the website. Read, if you're not familiar, read a couple articles. Does it seem like it's written in an editorial manner? Or if it seems like it's, some college students, live music blog or music blog, is it well written? Do they at least seem passionate? Click on the About tab. Do they seem to post things on the regular? And then don't be afraid to do that. So I think you can kind of look and build. And I always tell people, with publicity, not every artist is a publicity hit straight out of the gate, and some are, and people come at you very interested sometimes straight out of the gate, which is like a joy, but you might need to save some things to do during your album cycle, your festival cycle. So, and publicity, like anything, it's muscle. Like, you can work it over the time. You might develop these really wonderful writer relationships. I sometimes get to work with acts like that have a really long-standing catalog, and it's always a joy to work with a journalist who's like, oh, I was working at a fanzine and I wrote about this band 20 years ago, and like now their work reaches like the New York Times or the LA Times, or they're like an award-winning journalist, or they have a couple books under their belt. Like, that's always super cool. So.
Now, how about taking it to an artist that you do represent that might be early in their career? So they're signed by the label. Now you're overseeing the management of their personality, whether in public or private spheres. Like, what type of things that are you kind of doing to risk mitigate and basically just corral the story in a way that is productive for them?
Sure. So first thing I say is, have you ever done any interviews before? Do you have a dream publication for yourself? Like, is there an artist whose media you admire? Are there websites that you read? If I start working,
well, that's the prep, right? So say you're full steam now. You guys are working, yeah.
So we're working. So then it's just like rolling up your sleeves and getting in there, like calling the journalists who you think will understand this project and might be advocates, taking them out at night. I do a lot of desk sides and a lot of like lunches and dinners, kind of taking a look to be like, okay, your album is coming.
Are you organizing those dinners and lunches?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
okay.
Totally. Calling, being like, hey, do you have time to meet this artist? Or hey, like, I think you're familiar with this artist's work. I really enjoyed that get to know you piece you did. Ideally, I'd like to build this artist into a cover. I want them to be one of the regulars. Like, do you think you'd have time for a hang? And I also offer to go to journalists, especially like in the digital space. So many people have to like get up stories. Like, there's nothing wrong with calling, being like, hey, we're gonna be not too far from your area. Can we bring you like a coffee? Or if I know a journalist might like something, I'll be like, hey, do you mind if we pop by for the end of the day? Like, do you wanna do a happy hour? Like, what's up? So that's something to do too. I think also, not overdoing it. I think that some artists get really excited and they just like love seeing their name in press, or they love being able to like post things and then people be like, you look so beautiful, and like they get really excited about shoots. But like, let's make it kind of work for everything. Everything should amplify, everything should build. And a lot of people, to build yourself to where you get to the position where you can have a project coming out and you can be like, I'll do this cover, I'll do this late night show, I'll do a podcast with this journalist, and then I'm good. Like, that's a dream. That's what everyone wants. Like, very few people get that. It takes a long time. And I guarantee you the people who got there, they were probably strategic. So, and even just looking at who's coming out around you, are we going to have to be competitive? Like, there might be, I remember that summer that like every awesome rapper put out like a fabulous album like every week, and it's like Teyana Taylor's here, and then it's like Kanye West is here, and they're like, and Drake is coming in the fall,
That's a lot of noise.
This is coming and this is coming. Like, I guarantee you, like, how many publicists were calling Elliott Wilson being like, I need a live rap radar, like, I need you to do something for me, or how many people were calling Juliet Fallon being like, give me a booking, like, probably everyone. So, again, also just, you have to know what's going on in the marketplace around you.
So, of course, you excel at communications, and I'm sure that's through verbal, of course, that we're experiencing here, as well as written, and those elements of attaching to story and storytelling. But you must have an insane Rolodex of people that you're able to connect with. So whether they are, again, any sort of leverage you can pull from a human equity standpoint or a relationship equity, how are you managing all of those relationships? Because it's got to be more expansive than you can handle.
Well, look, there's certain journalists you're very close with, or every once in a while just
your go-tos.
Yeah, I might reach out to somebody and be like, Salmia, I haven't seen you in a minute. Kathy, I haven't seen you in a minute. Let's go have a coffee. Or like, there's journalists I go to like a spin class with. There's journalists who they like to do Saturday brunch. Like, there's certain journalists that I like to just check into because they're people. And then also every once in a while I'll send a note, sometimes just being like, hey, just wanted to keep you posted. This is like what I'm working on over the next couple weeks, and I'm sure you saw this. Like, here's a link to our roster. Let's talk. And look, there's also journalists who I may have pitched them a million times over the years. I've maybe gotten like one or two stories. They're not necessarily trying to hear from me all the time. They might not be available to hang out. Like, that's okay too. At the end of the day, if you can get in efficiently, talk to them about what you need, be honest, and then kind of say, this is what I would love, and I'd love your opinion. that's as good as gold.
Yeah, but these are relationships, right?
There
so
are
going with
relationships.
asks is really tough, right?
It's
So what
tough, but also like I remember once not too long ago, I had a journalist hit me who's like, look, my mom's in town. My mom really loves this artist. If you have anything available, and I was like, I have got your mom.
Back.
I've got your mom, and I gave her really great tickets because that person always went up, to bat for us. But also, again, you can't take things personally. There's only X amount of pages. Like, no one's trying to be malicious. Like, some people are more available to do things with you with not. And also, I think one thing that I love about Columbia is, like, we're a team. We all work together, our publicity department. Our department head does not try and give someone 5 projects all coming out between May and April. Like, that might not be, the best fit. And I think it's okay to also work with your team. Someone will say to me, oh, I know you're tight with this journalist. I'm not as tight. Could you just like drop them a note? And other times I'll be like, hey, I know you're taking your artist into the office today. If you have a second, can you say, hey, by the way, I believe Sarah Mary's working on something, blah, blah, blah. We'd love to, get your opinion. So it's that. And look, like and also just pay attention to who's on the come up, like, some of the most amazing journalists today, they were writing for their college papers. They were editorial assistants, like.
Do you have your eyes on that stuff?
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, I love when a young journalist comes forward and they have really great things to say. They're awesome. Like, you can tell that they're a good writer. They're solid. I was a young publicist once, too. I didn't always have, like, a corp card and, like, a big roster and, like, the ability to, like, approve things,
and well-applied eyeliner?
Yeah, well-applied eyeliner, not So, like, I think that's important, too. But, like, writers come out of everywhere. I look at some of the, like, I think Rembert Brown is such a genius. I think he's such an incredible writer. And when, like, I first met him, he was, like, newly graduated from college, but he was so whip smart. He was so excellent, an excellent interviewer. He was doing great work. Same thing, Kathy Iandoli, I met her years ago. She's literally written for everyone. Like, she did an incredible book with Prodigy. Like, she's such an incredible writer. Every artist that I take to her just loves her. But, Kathy and I were both young and working. She was working for a small website. I was, dragging artists around town, like, very new into my career. So, you can grow together and you can watch people on the come up, and that's great too. And if you're not necessarily familiar, you don't have to say yes to everything, and you can keep an eye on it and like see what it becomes. So,
I'm seeing, especially on the retail space, so when you talk about brands in like CPG or physical products, this year has been kind of this crazy transition from, I guess, towards experiential. So, prioritizing engagements directly with their consumer. Right. Are you finding the same with your artists as well?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it also, like, never take away the experience of having, an artist that, like, fills a room. Not every artist is going to have 9 million followers. Not every artist is going to have the budget to have, like, a huge live stage show. But at the end of the day, music is meant to be consumed. And if you were an artist and you didn't want people to hear your music, you could make songs in your bedroom for like sing to yourself, or you could put them up anonymously on SoundCloud and never respond to anything. But I think that's important more than ever. And like, what can we give to our fans, and how can we be good to our fans from day one? And then I think also, like, what can we do to bring in new fans? And look, I know people will say, like, oh, artist development is over. It is not. Like, artists who get in there and start, they tour, they talk to their fans, they do press, they do radio, they post stuff to their socials even if it's not natural to them, they sign autographs. Like, the artists who do all of that, there's something to be said about, like, the hard working artists. And also just, like, look at, like, the arc. Like, Casey Musgraves has had an incredible year. That album was amazing. She is a working songwriter. This is not her first album, like, just, I think there's, like, something to be said about that. Hozier, a Columbia Records artist, he had the #1 album. That is an artist who works extremely hard. He is so talented. He literally was, like, busking in the subway doing interesting things. Like, people would say to me, like, oh, I don't work on Hozier, but, people would say, I see him everywhere. And that's true too. And like, that's someone who his fans showed up in force. You have to be good to your fans. I always cringe and look, I get it. If someone runs up and screams in your face when you're trying to get into your car, or like an artist is having, brunch with their kid, and like, it can be a lot, but like, whenever I see artists being rude to their fans or kind of cringy to their like fans, I absolutely hate it. 'Cause I'm like, yo, these people, they didn't have to buy your song. They didn't have to go get up and be on Ticketmaster at 10 a.m. on the dot. Like, trying to buy those tickets, they didn't have to leave their house and put on their jackets and, go out at night to go see your show. So, I mean, I've always believed in that too, like, be good to your fans. So, but that's not even publicity. I think that's just in
good
general.
Nature?
Yeah, good nature. So,
before we wrap up, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about some of the nonprofit work that you do. I, of course, before starting, had mentioned that I'm getting more and more involved with a great organization called Urban Word. How about on your side?
Sure. So I work with an organization called She Is the Music. It's known as SITM. Alicia Keys, her longtime engineer, Ann Mincielli, Jody Gershon, who is probably one of the most powerful people in music and just a really inspiring woman, and Sam Kirby, who is at William Morris Endeavor, also very incredible. They got together to start this organization, which is designed at increasing the number of women working in music. We also want to inspire the next generation of women to actively seek out roles in music, and not just seek out roles, but look for leadership roles and really thrive and increase visibility. And in 2018, the Annenberg Institute for Inclusivity did a study on the music industry, and they are like a third party. There was no money. Like, this was something they do on their own. They published their findings, and the numbers were disgusting. For every 49 male producers working, there is one female producer.
Ooh.
They studied 6,000 songs.
Say that again, one more time.
For every 49 male producers, there is one female producer. And let me tell you something else. 6,000 songs from 2013 to 2017, I believe. Only 2.6% were engineered by women. Only 2% had female producers. And of those 2%, there was only 2 women of color. And another thing, of 2,767 accredited songwriters, only 12% were women. And that is not okay. And if you go to SITM, if you go to sheisthemusic.org, the study is there. You can click on it and you can read it. But that's not okay, because women are fully capable of doing these jobs. We are here. And one of the things that I really love about sheisthemusic.org is we have 3 things that we're working on. We're working on a database where women creators around the world can enter themselves and create a profile, and we have different subjects under it, like engineering, live music, and you can click on it and fill out a profile. Anyone can view, the database, but it's only women in this database. It's fully vetted, and that way women can find each other, women can support each other. And I'm tired of hearing people say things like, I've heard men say things like, I would have hired a female tour manager, but there's no top-level female tour managers, or I would have hired a female lighting director, I couldn't find one, or I was arranging something and I would have brought in a female brass player, but women don't play brass. We are here, and with this database, you will never be able to say that again. And whether you're a girl who is in Wisconsin, writing songs in your bedroom, or you are Linda Perry, you can be in this database and you can find each other. So I'm very proud about that, and I think that, I'm just so excited that women are signing up and our male allies are spreading the word. Additionally, we do all-female songwriting camps. Alicia Keys has done a camp. Kim Petros has done a camp for us. Lauren Jaregui has done a camp for us. So artists come in, they give their time, music is created, and then our songwriting committee amplifies that music. And then also we have a mentorship program because, again, it's very important that women be able to get internships and have mentors, like, working in music. But it's up there, and I always tell people, like, all you have to do, I even told our A&R team, if you know of anyone who might be a good fit, just send them the website. So I'm really excited about the work we're doing. I feel like so passionate about it. We have a wonderful group of female artists, Rosalia, Rita Wilson, all these incredible women who are our creator community. Lots of different women have been jumping up. In fact, after this, I have to go do a call for work, and then I'm going to a SITM panel that's being done by RCA at Sony Square. So I'm really proud of that, and I think it's something that, like, we need to do. And women have always been here, and we do really great work, and it can't be pushed aside.
Now, what type of people are you looking to connect with today for any of the initiatives that you're involved in, whether it be professionally or personally? And what is the best way to connect with you?
I'm down to talk to anyone who wants to talk. Clearly, I'm not at a loss for words. Again, I'm very involved in the outdoors community and fitness community, but I do heavily work in music, and I work with a lot of photographers and journalists and event producers, and I think it's important just to, like, talk to everybody. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm here now.
You are here now.
Yeah, people can
Thank
always
you.
people can always like email me or whatever, but I'm just like totally like down to talk. And I think it's important because sometimes you feel like you know everything about an industry, or you feel like you've met everyone in New York, and like we certainly haven't. And I know I had an artist again speaking at the Forbes conference, and I sat in on a bunch of like fintech stuff, and I sat in on some stuff about things like the medical field is doing. And I mean, a lot of it went over my head, but there was just such interesting people like working in this space, and you know, the power players in that space, but also people on the come up who are doing interesting things. And you know, that was just, I think, kind of good and like eye-opening. So, and part of the reason I love being in the outdoors community is that everybody's the same on the trail. Like you're under the same sun, you're in the same temperature, you're away from your home, you don't have running water. So everyone sort of just talks and kind of helps each other and is friendly to each other and says hello. And I think that's been a good teaching lesson for me, because I think in New York we kind of rush around a lot, and in entertainment we can feel self-important. So,
well, we're going to wish you, and by the time this episode airs live on the podcast, of course, you would hopefully already have been accomplished it, but she is setting out, Sarah Mary is setting out to climb Mount Everest, leaving New York on April 4th.
yeah.
So when she says she's outdoorsy, it's
no, I'm gonna, true story, I'm just doing portions. I feel like whenever I say like I'm doing Everest, like people are like, oh my God, because they've all seen the movie. And I'm like, I'm not going to the summit, but I am gonna do portions with a group of women, which is exciting. And true story, my goal is to come back in one piece. I came back from Mount Kilimanjaro when we had the bomb cyclone in New York. And the wind had been so bad on Kilimanjaro, even with a balaclava on, I got second-degree windburn on my face, and the very next day, little Zan was doing a press day, and I had to go get him, and like my face was just, what?
I said, is that an exciting one?
Yeah, I mean, I landed, and I had to go straight to do this the next day, and like my face was just like red, my lip was like split and scabbed over, and I remember I was like, okay, if I wear this hoodie, and I like do my brows, like maybe it won't look that obvious, and I guess I was so used to looking at my face. And he was very polite. He didn't say anything. His manager didn't say anything. They were so sweet. And we went to the XXL offices, and the wonderful editor-in-chief, Vanessa, came out and hugged me. And she goes, how are you? I'm shocked you're here today. I thought you'd have to be in the hospital dealing with your windburn. And Zan and his manager was like, oh, is that what was going on? Because they were so polite. They didn't want to say anything. And I was like, oh, my God. So, like, yeah, I landed and had to go straight. So my goal is, because I'll be landing I come back and like Coachella's wrapped up. We have artists coming. It's festival season. You know, I have all sorts of stuff going. So my goal is to like come back and hopefully like my face is just like as good as it can be.
Well, we're sending our well wishes here from New York and beyond. And again, thank you so much for being here on the Bellwether Culture Podcast. Thank you to be here at Chelsea Music Hall. And we look forward to following your career and your journey.
And
cheers.
Shout out to you for having so many different people up here, like women of color, like men of color. It's awesome. And so many people from different fields. And like, yo, shout out to you.
There
like,
is a
real.
team behind me.
Don't
Thank
leave
you.
me out.
Thank you so much, guys. Cheers.